This week's Torah portion of Parshat begins and ends with a very significant message that is both personal and foundational, but yet very, very pertinent to all of us, and pertinent to me in a personal way, which I will share with you in a moment. The beginning of the Parsha, it says, when someone portions off maaser, a tithe of fruit, he is to bring that fruit to Yerushalayim to eat it in Jerusalem, in the place designated for the Shekhinah, for the divinity of God. And it says, Ki im lifnei Hashem Elokecha tochlenu, b'makom asher yivchar Hashem Elokecha. You must eat that portion of fruit specifically in the place that is designated by God. Ata ubincha ubitcha ve'avdacha ve'amatecha. You, your sons, your daughters. In other words, everything begins with your children, your family. And then, then you will indeed enjoy happiness in front of God. And in addition, at the end of the Parsha, this is emphasized over and over again with regards to what is the derivation, the ability to receive, to derive, to transmit that simcha, that ultimate happiness. And the Torah says, again, your entire household. But simcha, true happiness, begins with your sons, your daughters, your household. Asher b'sharecha, asher b'kibecha, asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha l'shakein shemo sham. And then once again, 2 psukim later, v'samachta b'chagecha, ata uvincha uvitecha. In order to have and rejoice in the holidays, the 3 holidays, presumably when you go up to Jerusalem and express that happiness is derived again by being surrounded by bincha uvitecha. It begins with your children, with your nuclear family, which is your nucleus towards receiving that happiness. And then again, only a few psukim later, with regards to Chag HaSukkot, v'samachta b'chagecha ata uvincha uvitecha. Yes, you have to remember the strangers and you have to remember the orphan and the widow. There's no question about that. We have an obligation to include and to be inclusive with regards to those who might feel excluded or outcasts. But simcha begins with your nuclear family, your children, your sons, and your daughters. What do we see from here? The true derivation of simcha is having a family, is having children, is looking at them and beaming with pride and saying, what have I ultimately built? What we're building is not only obviously our finances, obviously our comforts and our zones, but what we're really building is a legacy. Simcha, true happiness, is derived, not pleasure, but happiness is derived by the people that we nurture, that we guide, by the people that are going to take our messages forward. There's no question that with the loss of a child, Rahman al-Itzlan, no one should ever know, but as I say, we do. With the loss of Gila, our simcha is compromised. It is harder for us to attain simcha. It's more difficult and challenging to reach that simcha, that happiness. And I always speak to Gabby and tell her we never will really attain full simcha, full happiness again. And yet, interestingly enough, about a year after Gila passed on, there wasn't one Shabbat when Kiddush on Friday night I would burst out into tears, or I'd start crying and shedding tears in reflection of the neshama yitera, the extra neshama, the extra soul that joins us on Shabbat, and yet that is lost by Gila not being there. And so in a sense her neshama would join us, and yet that would be her neshama, but she wasn't sitting around the table. When I have other children sitting around the table, I'd look at them with pride and beaming with joy, and yet that joy was at the same time compromised, not complete. And one Shabbat I was crying, and after Shabbat, my daughter, my oldest daughter, she came over to me and sensitively said to me after Shabbat, and she said, Abba, in all due respect, I want to ask you a favor. When we and the kids are here, our 3 grandchildren from them, when they're around the table, when the little kids, when your grandchildren see you crying, it disturbs them. It gets them so upset. Would you please, if you can, try your best to refrain so that they don't have to be in a state of sadness. I understand that you have feelings and I understand that you need to cry at times, but maybe you could hold back the tears a little bit when we're there so that our kids can just enjoy their Saba and be happy with him. And it taught me a very important lesson. While there's no question that there's sadness that certainly takes me from one place, escorts me from one occasion and from one place to another, nonetheless, one has to look around their table and be proud and be happy with the children and the legacy that they are establishing and that they can establish in their future. We have to be able to embrace our children, our families, enjoy them, and remember that true simcha, our ultimate happiness, is by the kesher, the connection, the relationship, the rapport that we establish with them. They are our future, they are our legacy, they are ultimately our source of Gila, of happiness, of rejoicing. This is the Torah way. It is something that the Torah wants us to remember and to embrace. It is the Jewish way, and certainly I believe that Gila is telling us it is the Gila way. Shabbat Shalom.